I think there's younger countries and older countries, age-wise, like for real. Like um, we have like the United States and Europe and the UK. Like these are old men hanging on to power as best they can. They've fucked up their countries. Everyone underneath them hates them. It's chaos all over the place. While younger nations that are all on the same page are now teaming up with each other, outnumbering us considerably and outsmarting us considerably. And they have that youthful drive and kind of gung-ho thing that the old guys don't have. The old guys are puppet masters playing with their money, manipulating everything, while these other guys are just going to come and steamroll over this thing. And we're not going to have a choice. And maybe it will be a currency used by many still, this US dollar, but it won't be the currency. It was the currency. You couldn't buy oil without it. Like you couldn't. Now everybody is buying oil without it.
I agree there's going to be options, but just the amount of like what's the amount? Isn't it like 87% of the world's commodities are traded with the US reserve currency? Like it's a pretty crazy number. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying like it's going to take a while for that number to start coming down as people no longer want to use the US dollar.
Well, I think there's a couple aspects to it that we got to think of, which is in the country. So when you look at BRICS, and you start to realize that a lot of what's happening right now is that they're starting to create their own trade amongst themselves, right? And they're cutting out US in those terms, and they're starting to use their own currency to trade oil, to your point, as an example. But there's so much debt that is owed to the US in US dollars, of course. And so it takes a while to work through that. The fundamental difference is that when you consider, we'll use China as an example, we could use Russia. I mean, the history of those countries is they think long term. And so now what's happening is the divide between East and West grows. The strength between BRICS nations is expanding. I mean, I don't know how many countries are now lined up to be part of it, including Mexico, which is very interesting, given that Mexico has their trade agreement with US and Canada, yet they're saying, when, let's rip up this agreement, or when this agreement's done, we're going over there. That could be saber rattling. That could be just a threat. But that's a game that's being played. So to Daryl's point that we can't step over is these countries have young men. And so when you do get the releases of videos and stuff, you're seeing rioting in the streets, you're seeing real big battles. And those are because there is a youthfulness there of 25-year-olds that are just fired up. And they want to fight. They're looking forward to it. They're going to fight for whatever they stand for. Those are things that don't tend to happen to the same degree, in Western countries. So
yeah, they're hungry.
And certainly UK, to your point, just a bunch of old guys.
Really. Yeah, but they're hungry. Like literally, they're hungry and they're hungry, right? Yeah. Like these guys are gonna fucking take over.
Did you guys
and they have Starlink? Like they don't even have to lay any cables or infrastructure to join the internet. Like this is next level. Like they're gonna go so fast. It's crazy.
Yeah,
people don't get it.
Did you guys happen to see what happened to Sri Lanka over the past couple of years? Did you guys follow that?
I saw some like videos,
the protests
recently,
and things like that, but not anything.
No, okay. So this is a classic example of what's happening. So we look at ESG, environmental, societal, and governance, and the need to be environmentally on point. Getting rid of fertilizer. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. Something that our federal government, by the way, is trying to tell our farmers here in Canada, which is just ridiculous. I won't go there, but let's put it this way. Sri Lanka as a country, their president, this was a few years ago, like let's say 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know exact time frames. He goes, we're going to implement this whole environmental thing. We're going to live by the rules, and we're going to cut back. Now, Sri Lanka is an island. It's like 36 million people, whatever it is. They have this like idyllic, what's the word? Idyllic life, right? It's like a beautiful, beautiful place. President comes in, goes, we're going to quit using fertilizer because that's climate change. It's a responsible thing to do. And they got 40 to 60% less yield. Then that was 1 year. The next year was 80%. So he started starving his freaking country out. They had to try and import food, couldn't afford to do it. Now, the whole country melted down. Like literally, they ran the president out of the country on the rails. He escaped on a ship or some stupid thing. They burnt down, Parliament, ministers of Parliament. They burnt their houses, burnt their cars. And now today it's an absolute cluster screw. Like it's a mess. Can't get fuel, lineups, all the rest of it. They have just totally shut down. Now, go back a little bit more of that story. Here's what happens, and you are going to start seeing it. And TK, you probably or maybe more aware of it as you're doing deals. So Sri Lanka goes to the World Bank or whatever they go to get money, and World Bank goes, yes, we're happy to lend you as much money as you want. It's conditional. You have to fall into these eco regulations and rules. So he went 93% ESG compliant in order to get the money for the country that he wanted. This is kind of Cole's notes. Well, 93% compliant. He starved the country out. And it's totally melted down. We're not being talked about that. But when you go to get financing now, on some commercial financing, you're starting to see the terminology around ESG. And that becomes conditional in terms of getting that loan. So a little bit long-winded, but I think these are all things that are happening in behind the scenes and the changes that we have to deal with.